right, everybody. Good morning. And I may or may not tell you what just happened, but here we are. Melissa Kaye is the founder of Gather for Impact, and we wanted to jump on this morning after a conversation she and I had just between Melissa and I. It was so encouraging and so inspirational, so on fire. I was like, you know what? We need to address the elephant in the room because everybody is making these resolutions, setting goals. This is going to be the year. They get these little slogans for the new year, whatever it is. They want to leave the past behind, and all this magic is going to happen simply because the calendar changed from one year to the other. Well, Melissa Kaye is here. She does retreats, masterminds, one-on-one coaching, group coaching. She is amazing, and you are sure to gather something from her today, pun intended. Melissa, welcome to Morning with Loretta.
Thank you, Loretta. Good morning. I'm so happy to be here.
So we're going to talk about, and we spend a lot of time talking about this, but when we go to a workshop, seminar, sometimes even church, right? We go and we are filled, we're excited, we can't wait to get home. We're repeating all these affirmations, and this is going to happen. All I need to do is get home, get to my journal, and I'm going to make it happen. And then I don't know if life starts lifing or something happens, but some kind of way we lose the magic. Can you tell us just off the bat? And I know more will be revealed, but y'all, there is no magic. There's no secret sauce. There's no Kool-Aid. We have to do the work. But Melissa and I are going to try to tell you what happens from the moment of exuberance, and I can, to getting home and, hey, I lost that energy. What happened, Melissa?
I think that you were right. When kind of like life happens, we have so many distractions. Like I think about just even 10 years ago, we didn't have the distractions we have now. Life is moving at such a fast pace. There's so many voices in our head. There's so many phones and computers and calls. And I mean, we're just distracted all the time. So no matter how much we want one thing, unless we really do some work, like in the moment, that sounds great. But if we don't do the work to break it down, if we don't do the work to have an accountability system, if we don't do the work to really focus on, okay, what's the why? And this is important, then what else? So that way, when that distraction comes, you go, no, this is more important. And it's sort of like a muscle. Like, if we want to get in shape this year, we got to go to the gym and do those reps. You can't just
or home or in your home.
Or in your home,
because home exercise works too, is effective, and anything will work if you're consistent. But what I want to really talk about is
consistency.
Yeah, consistency, number one. But I want to move past, what do we do when the magic ends, right? What do we do when the magic ends once we get home? Or if we're at home and we're watching something on our YouTube or on our phones or on TV, they have this dynamic speaker, whether it's a pastor or it's a speaker, or if it's a movie and something happens, and now all of a sudden, because they're excited, right? The movement, everybody's in the room, is good energy. And we are affirming, we're repeating everything, we're even taking notes. But then 2022 happens, and if we look at those notes, not much happened or changed. I really want to help people get unstuck before we talk about how we're gathering and then what happens when we gather. So can we just kind of give them that? And that, again, no magic formula, no secret sauce here, and no Kool-Aid that you can just duplicate. We have to understand what is happening.
Have to get unstuck. Unstuck is the kind of key word. In our human journey, we go through things, and what 10 years ago worked. 10 years ago, you did this certain thing, you achieved this thing, and that worked. That was the behavior that got you there. But life has changed. There's different people in your life. There's different surroundings. This is a different goal. But sometimes we're relying on those old habits or those old behaviors. There's also another piece of it, it's very layered. There's another piece of it where we have this self-talk, or we're having, there was some trauma in our past, and we can't see outside of what we know. And so we have to learn new skills, and we have to be really intentional. If you want your life to change, if you want something different than what you have now, you can't do everything the same and get something different. So we have to learn new behaviors. We have to learn new patterns. And sometimes that means overcoming old patterns. Sometimes that just means intentional about taking out what's not serving us and adding in what is.
Okay.
And usually most people need an outside eye to do that, whether it's your best friend or your parent or your coach. Those are like blind spots for us. So a lot of times we need to be able to have someone else ask us the hard questions. Well, why do you want that? What would change if you had that? And what would change good and what would change bad? Sometimes what I want for myself may, in my mind, somebody else that's close to me might have a bad response to it. So holding myself back might be how I continue getting love.
So one of the things, I love what you just said, and I want us to really dial that all the way down, but if we don't have an accountability partner, usually our best friends just want what's best for us, right? That's why they're our best friends.
They just love us.
Sometimes what's best for us is having those hard conversations. Well, Loretta, you were good, but you weren't great. And I have people who do that for me. Sometimes it hurts my feelings, but I understand that they still at the end of the day want what's best for me and want to push me out of my comfort zone and my good zone to my great zone. So we need, as best friends, first of all, I think if we just start there, and then they get to choose. We're not saying that just because your best friend says it, or your husband or your wife or your significant other says you need to change or you need to add this or take that away. You still get to decide at the end of the day what you change and what you take away. But some people want people to tell them what to do, and then they do it not knowing, well, maybe that sounded good, but it wasn't the great thing to do. How do you address that one?
I think that we all as humans want to have opinions and we want to help. So it may be a topic I don't know a lot about, but you asked my opinion, so I'm going to give it. I think, especially in 2023 now, everyone has an opinion, whether it's online or in the news. There's so many different news outlets, and none of them say the same thing. So just because I tell you something doesn't mean I'm the expert. And I think as humans, if we can start remembering that, we don't have to be the expert in anything. You don't even have to have an opinion on everything.
Right.
Last year, one of the new skills that I developed was when people were talking, I want to be a part. I want to have community. I want to give my 2 cents. But I started saying, if I don't have something really valuable to say that I know is, the right direction, or, there's opinion and then there's really guided conversation. If I'm not an expert on a subject, I'm going to not talk about it. I'm going to listen and I'm going to learn. And it was a really interesting year doing that.
And that is so difficult because let's say you something really great happened or something really triggered a trauma thought for you, and you call your best friend or your pastor or whoever you can call. But at the same time, life is happening to them too. So which conversation do you have? Do you comfort the person that you called them for comfort? Because what typically happens, somebody's going to change the trajectory of that call that you initiated. And so as we talk about gathering, I think this is a good point to have, because if you didn't initiate the call, in my humble opinion, you shouldn't take over the call unless it's life-threatening or, it's a 911 thing. But if someone is calling with good news and then you're right now in that bad news place, what is right, or what is, I won't say right or wrong, but if you didn't initiate the call, I don't think you should control the call, unless, again, if it's traumatizing. But if you're a best friend, can I share my news and then can I listen to you? I think that's a good way to gather, but don't control the conversation or the event. Have you had an event, Melissa, where you were speaking and somebody was so full with life happening to them, they needed that outlet and it was always about them? And what do you do so that other people are getting their bang for their buck too?
So you're the event host and you have that person. I love this question. This is actually pillar 3 of the 4 pillars of impactful gathering. Pillar 3 is to be a gracious host or a gracious leader. So for instance, I'm going to pick a networking event, for instance. That one person who's always talking, they are your leader. And so if this is your event and you've already really honed down the impact. You've created a space where people feel safe and they're ready to be inspired. And now you're like, oh, I'm just going to chill. Like, I don't want to have to, I don't want to be controlling. I just want the event's just going to happen. If you're not a gracious host means you are making sure all of your attendees have the experience that they came and deserve. So that person who is making it all about them, they're taking the impact that you have for your group and they're taking it off course. It's your job as a gracious leader to get you back on course, whether that means taking that person to the side and saying, you know what, let's go out to lunch next week. I want to hear all about this. But right now, this event is about something different. That's a hard, critical conversation to have. And people think, oh, I don't want to be mean to that one person. But in retrospect, they're being mean to the other 49 people because this person, is taking the event off track. So as an event host or as a gathering leader, you are the leader. Someone is always the leader. So if you are gathering with people and you have gathered those people, you're the responsible one for making sure that whoever is leading is taking it where it needs to go, where those attendees, where the people in the room need it to go, not just where one person needs it to go.
Okay. And that's a tough call, right? Because for some reason, it's always the one that gets all the attention, right? Jesus left the 99 to go to the one, and he'll do that for us. Or you have 5 kids and one is, traumatized by something. You got to do that, but it's fine timing, and you have to figure out, how do I let the 99 know that they're still important to me? And then I need to let this person know that I know they need something from somebody right now, and the timing may be off, but their need is still there. So that brings us to gathering, which is what you do. You figured something was happening. I don't know what was your defining moment for creating Gather for Impact that you are the founder and CEO of. But when we gather, why is it so difficult to stay in the moment and to have that moment without worrying about all these other things at the same time?
Why is it so difficult? Can you ask that? I want to make sure I'm understanding the question.
Yeah. Why is it so difficult to stay in the moment when you're gathering, whether it's a family reunion? We just did Christmas, right? And so all of us were together, and I'm telling you, somebody was worried about whether the turkey was too dry, even the preparer and the person tasting it. They're worrying about what the gift is. They're worrying about this, the children's job. They don't want to go back to work. They got all this other voice in their head, noise in their head. And they can't be in the moment. So how do we be in the moment knowing all this other stuff is valid too, but not just, it shouldn't be as important right now though? How do we disconnect?
Right. I love that. So I'm going to talk about this from 2 different aspects: how the host is in the moment and how you're in the moment as a guest, because there's guesting, like that's a new word. How do you become a good guest in an event? So something like a Christmas gathering is very different because it's still a gathering. So this is still really important. So what if, Loretta, in a gathering, you could talk, let's say, I'm going to say a family gathering. In the original invite, or when you're, talking to the family members, we can figure out who's bringing which food. Could we also figure out who needs what from our gathering? Hey, what's your big expectation for this year? What would be the best thing to happen and what would be the worst thing to happen? Because look at this. One person, the worst thing that could happen is if everyone's by the TV watching football and we're not talking. For someone else, the worst thing that could happen would be we're not watching football and we're all talking.
Yeah.
But if we don't acknowledge that, so now we say, okay, grandpa really wants to watch football and the cousins really need to get to know each other. So if ahead of time we can define what each individual person or family wants, like one thing, hey, you get one thing, what would that one thing be? Now, whoever's the head gatherer, the nurturer, the leader, can work to figure out ways not to do it how we've always done it, but to do it in a way that honors who people are today. It's comfortable as humans for us to think we know somebody, and then that person never changes. Oh, they love this, and then that's how we look at them for the next 50 years. But we're humans and we're all on this growth pattern and we're changing and we're growing. So especially when families tend to come together, to honor that this person, if you haven't seen them for a year, they're probably a different person than they were a year ago. Or let's
hope that's the case.
Let's hope so.
Let's hope that people have changed, but oh my goodness, I have so many questions, Melissa. You just don't understand, because when we talk about balance and living a balanced and fulfilled life, we know it looks different for everybody. But what happens, we all want that cookie cutter approach, and we want our cookie to look and taste like somebody else's. We want the balance of an Oprah or Elon Musk. We want that kind of balance, but that's not our life, right? You can't say, well, Loretta, you need to do 10% here, give 10% there, have 8% self-care, 90%, you ran out of percentages. So what I want to do, I want to give people time to get their questions together. We're going to kind of answer some questions for people that are watching. And then we're going to talk more about this, how, her 4 pillars. She talked about number 3 already. I really want to know what the rest of them are. So we're going to kind of slow down just a moment, and we'll be right back. I love that. Yes, you can download the McNary Media app. You can watch this show and any previous shows. Other content is on there. Just go to your app store, your Google Play Store, or you can watch it on your smart TVs, on Google TV, Apple TV, all that. And no, this is not a shameless plug, because guess what? That's what we do here. So Melissa, let's talk about one at a time. We have about less than 10 minutes. Let's talk about your pillars one at a time. And I'm going to have a question, I'm sure, or a comment about each one. Can you tell us what those 4 pillars of Gather for Impact are? Start with number 1.
Absolutely. Number 1 is creating the impact you wish. So defining that impact. When people leave, what is the one thing that you want them to leave with? Do you want them? And this is narrowing down the small picture. It's not big picture. Oh, I want everybody to come together and connect. Why? Do we want to connect to build community to make our neighborhood great? Do we want to build community to make our businesses stronger? Are we wanting to come together to create a park for the kids 7 neighborhoods over? What is the one purpose? What's the one impact that we need to get from this event? Then as you're planning your event, everything you plan, you go, does this create the impact I want? Does this create the impact I want? When we eat, does that push our impact forward, or is that interrupting our impact? Like every single thing gets measured to the impact that you want to create.
So should we set everything should have an impact agenda every time we meet, or every day, our goals, our life, or is that just when we gather? Or whether and gathering looks different, right? You could be hosting an event like a mastermind that you're hosting coming up, or you could be hosting your family over, or meeting at work. So we should identify what our impact is.
Correct. Yeah. So this is in the gathering. And when I say gather, I'm referring to 3 or more people. I mean, 2 people can definitely gather, and you definitely can gather with yourself. So I think these 4 pillars do sort of, you can definitely take the 4 pillars on an individual level, but the pillars were built for a gathering of people, 3 or more, 3 to 3,000, 3 million, doesn't matter.
Okay.
But when you're developing that gathering, when you're putting together that event, that meeting, there needs to be one driving force. And that's very rare for people to do. Normally there's agendas, which means there's 14 different impacts we want to have here.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Look at your agenda and find what's the one thing that if we got this point across, all 14 pieces of this agenda would excel at a higher rate. It's hard work. That's why people don't do it. That's why they just worry about the water bottles and the stale coffee.
And again, another reason why we get excited from a good speaker, we're excited, we're inspired, we're motivated, we're encouraged while we're in that moment. And then we get home and what happened? Blah, 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 blah. Nothing happened. We're not doing what we committed to in that moment. And that's because we didn't set an intention and we don't do the work intentionally. Okay, number 2.
All right, number 2 is creating a space that is here and not there. I think in 2023, this is going to be event gathering hosts, it's going to be the number one thing that's the most difficult because we're all distracted. We talked about that earlier. There's just so much going on. How, when they walk into your room, how are you going to get them for that 10 minutes, that half hour, that 2 hours? How do you get them to stay here, out of their phones, off their devices, not with the fight they had with their spouse last night? How do you do that? How do you make your content so compelling that for those minutes that they're with you, they are truly with you? That's a big one.
Ooh, I'm thinking about that now, because if people can just do that outside of setting the housekeeping rule that you cannot have your phone out during this time together, how can you compel them, as you say, to want to take notes, to want to be fully engaged? And I think prior to going to the event, there are some repetitions that we can do, and I talk about that in some of my trainings, how you can prepare your soul, your body, and your mind to be in that moment and to not have everything else, life going on, to disturb that. Because if you don't do it, you're going to miss something. And that's another reason why once you get all excited and inspired, and then you get home and you don't feel that anymore, that was just a temporary phenomenon for you, is because you didn't set the intention and you didn't do the work prior to that to not have any distractions. So, okay, that's good. What's number 3?
Number 3 is to be a gracious leader, to make sure you're protecting your guests. You're not protecting the company, you're protecting your guests from someone else being a leader and taking them on a different impact. You're protecting your guests from going home and having that blah feeling, because depending what this impact is, you're making sure they're creating actionable steps. You're sure they're creating connections to keep them accountable. Again, it depends what the event is, what kind of impact. So therefore, how you're going to protect your guests. But there has to be a gracious leader, not a dictator leader that's like, no, we do this now, we do that now, put your phones away. Not a chill leader. Oh, everybody do whatever you want. A gracious leader. So people might not know you're leading if you're really good at it. Again, every event is different. And this is where the coaching is so important, because there's so much to think about that we don't think about. We just have a start, an end, and a lot of events don't even have an end, which takes me to pillar 4, but I'm getting ahead. So pillar 3, gracious leadership.
A gracious leader. And in order to do that, you do have to understand and kind of be empathetic, but don't be so empathetic that you're now sympathetic and you're stopping everything and throwing away your whole agenda for the one person. And like we said, address that person's need, because who knows what's going on and why they need that attention right now. Address it. And like you said, move it to another, hey, can we table this right now? And then we can get together another time, because I really do have a lot of great information that may answer that question that you have. So you do have to be gracious without losing your other people and without offending somebody. Oh, this is good stuff. Gracious host.
Yeah. And talking about that, most times when you're hosting an event, you have somebody, like whether you have a board, a leadership team, your best friend, usually there's someone else there. So in that situation where there is someone perhaps in breakdown or needing that attention, having the leadership ability to know, I have to be here for everyone else in the room, but I also know that this person needs me. In those moments, something you can choose to do would be to grab that best friend, grab that leadership, whoever is there that could handle it, and address that person. Listen, this is so important to me, but I do have to continue on with this meeting, but let me have you and Melissa go out to the hall and she can help you, help you through this. That way you're honoring both that individual and the group, and you're able to continue on your agenda.
Yeah. And that's a learned skill, everybody. So, but it is a very critical skill if you're doing gathering of any kind, or hosting an event, or hosting a workshop, or a mastermind, which Melissa is doing. So after pillar 4, she's going to tell you about that after pillar 4, she's going to talk about the mastermind group. So what's number 4?
Number 4 is a tricky one. Number 4 is the end is near. How many events have you been to recently that you could not tell me what the ending moment was?
Ooh, other than they said, okay, goodbye. Or thank you for your time.
And then it still doesn't really end and it's okay if after there can be an ending, a clear end, and people can still stay, network, connect, whatever. That's not the gathering. The gathering is from when it starts to when it ends. So there's lots of events end like with a really great keynote speaker. Goodbye, have a great, week, whatever. That can be a great ending. And when it comes down to smaller, intimate gatherings, it's more difficult because we're having such a great time. We're gathering, and now there's that person. Hey, I got a jet, and they go, and then little by little, everybody trickles out, and the event was never truly ended. So one of the clients I was coaching over the holidays has a relatively large family, and it's always been tradition that people kind of come whenever, and there's only a short window of time where everybody's there. So we really focused on creating that impact in that short amount of time. And before that first person, or actually when that first person who we kind of already had predicted who it would be, is like, oh, hey, I got to run. They said, great, give me 2 minutes. They gathered the family got in a circle, held hands, and each person in the circle had to tell another person their wish for them for the following year. Aww. And so it was quick. It was everybody has 10 seconds. So it was 2 minutes. And then they said, this member of the family has to leave. Thank you all for being here and being a part of our family. So that was the official end of the impact that was being created. So even in a, more fluid family event, you can create an ending to your event. In a big event, is that a quote? I have a manager right now, when she signs off on our Zoom, on her Zoom business meetings, she says a quote. And so what that tells us, her attendees, is that, oh, it's over.
Yeah.
And there was one day, I was listening in as I'm coaching her, and everyone was just on like, where's the quote? Nobody was logging off early because everyone was waiting for the quote.
Okay, I like that. You've given us a lot to think about and a lot to implement, because I'm telling you, 2023 is not going to be different from 2022 or 2021 if you're not different. And if you're not learning, being a lifelong learner, and then implementing those things that you learn, then you can forget your 2023 just magically being the best year ever. You got to do the work. So Melissa has a mastermind coming up. We have like 1 minute or less for her to just give you some information, how to reach out to her. She does this one-on-one in coaching and workshops, and she's a speaker at events. So tell them how they can reach you for this mastermind information.
Okay, so you can go to the website, www.gather4impact.com, gather4impact.com. Right, there's a bar that says Mastermind coming soon. It is closing, Loretta. It's closing on Friday. Registrations, then the groups are formed for the year. This is a year-long mastermind. Wow. And I know everybody's like, I'm so busy, I can't commit. This is one time a month. So if you want something different in 2023, if you can commit to logging on, it's Zoom. You don't have to get anywhere. You don't have to buy a dinner. Awesome. You log on, you're going to be with the same 5 or 6 people the entire year. We're going to be talking about goals. We're talking about who you want to be in 2023, what you want to accomplish. And every single session is going to get niched all the way down to what are the actions you do this month? What's the accountability? It's going to be phenomenal. At the end of the year, we're going to be listing everything that's been accomplished in our group, and it's going to be spectacular. And absolutely, it's only $750 for the entire year. Plus you get 4. That's all? Yeah. Let me tell you why I did that, because most masterminds are thousands, and especially year-long ones. Yeah. The reason I did it is because about 10 years ago, I was part of a mastermind that really changed the trajectory of my life. And I want those people who they really want things to change this year, but they can't afford a $5,000, $10,000 mastermind, a $3,000 coaching session. So I put these together. This is kind of my gift to my community, $750, the entire year's tuition, 4 coaching sessions. And Loretta, I'm going to sweeten the pot just because you are my friend and I love you so much. And I know that your audience are probably the greatest people and they deserve this. I'm adding on top a 10% discount for anyone that's on the call on the show today. So when you go to purchase it, you just put in LMS, Loretta McNary Show, LMS 10, and you'll get a 10% discount. So now you're only paying $675.
Wow. Okay, well, I'm in that mastermind and I will be on the call, one of those groups that she's doing. And I promise you, I've done masterminds before, I've hosted mastermind groups, but even a doctor needs a doctor, right? So that's why I signed up for Melissa Kaye's mastermind group. We got to go. And you know how I end my show, because you always know once I do this, then she's out of there. And you can say it with me, right? Think positive, dream big dreams, help someone along the way. We'll see you all soon. Thanks, Melissa. Bye-bye, everybody.
Your life looks so different.